The silence was deafening, broken only by the rhythmic drip, drip, drip of the leaky faucet and the otherwise opulent bathroom. Years I'd spent scrubbing toilets, polishing silver, and swallowing every bitter word. And here I was, covered in grime, staring at a reflection that barely resembled the girl I used to be. They celebrated downstairs, clinking glasses to my downfall, secure in their victory. They thought they'd broken me, that leaving me on the doorstep of that orphanage at 16 had sealed my fate. They were wrong. If you have a sister, a mother, or a daughter that you cherish with all your heart, subscribe to this channel right now. My name is Camila, and this is the story of how my family tried to erase me and how I made them pay. It all started with a crumpled note, slipped under the door of the group home like a forgotten newspaper. It was an invitation, or rather a summons, to the reading of my estranged uncle's will. Uncle Silas, a man I barely knew, a phantom limb of a family I'd been severed from. My mother, a whirlwind of broken promises and fleeting affection, had vanished from my life on my 16th birthday, leaving only a scribbled note on the kitchen counter and a trail of unanswered questions. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. I was alone. The state took over, shuffled me into the system, and the rest of my family, aunts, uncles, peasants, became distant stars, twinkling in a galaxy I was no longer a part of. I learned to survive, to build walls around my heart, to expect nothing from anyone. So the invitation to the will reading felt like a cruel joke, a twisted reminder of everything I'd lost. Still, a sliver of curiosity, a desperate hope for closure, compelled me to attend. The law office was everything I expected, sterile, imposing, and filled with the hushed whispers of people who considered themselves important. My family was there, a collection of perfectly coiffed heads and tailored suits. They greeted me with polite nods, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and thinly veiled disdain. My mother was there too. She didn't acknowledge me. I felt like a ghost haunting their meticulously curated lives. The lawyer, a man with a voice as dry as parchment, began to read the will. It was the usual fare: charitable donations, family heirlooms, stocks and bonds divided amongst the various relatives. And then came the bombshell. A significant portion of Uncle Silas's estate, millions of dollars, was to be held in trust for me, Camila, to be released upon my 30th birthday, provided I met certain conditions, namely attending regular therapy sessions and maintaining a stable job. The room erupted.
My cousins, who had always treated me like an unwelcome stain on their pristine lineage, began to protest, their voices shrill with indignation. Aunts and uncles chimed in, arguing that I was unfit, unstable, undeserving of such a fortune. My mother remained silent, her face an unreadable mask. The lawyer, unflappable as ever, reminded them that the will was legally binding, that Uncle Silas had been very specific in his wishes. But that wasn't enough. They closed ranks, their resentment coalescing into a united front. They argued that I was a charity case, a product of the system, incapable of managing such a large sum of money. They demanded that the will be contested, that the money be redistributed amongst the deserving members of the family. The air crackled with their entitlement, their greed so palpable it choked me. I felt a familiar ache in my chest, the sting of rejection, the weight of being unwanted. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to tell them all to go to a place where the sun doesn't shine. But I didn't. I stayed silent. The person I trusted most was one of them. It was my Aunt Clara, my mother's sister. She had always been kind to me, offering a smile or a hug when my mother was too preoccupied or simply absent. She had even sent me birthday cards and small gifts after my mother had disappeared. I truly thought she cared. But as I watched her join the chorus of condemnation, her face contorted with the same avarice as the others, something inside me shattered. The hope I had been clinging to, the belief that there was someone in this family who saw me as more than just an inconvenience, evaporated like morning mist. It was then, in that moment of profound betrayal, that I knew what I had to do. They thought they had won. They thought they could just dismiss me, like some inconvenient piece of furniture to be discarded. But I had news for them. I was not going anywhere. The lawyer, sensing the rising tension, suggested a compromise, A neutral third party would manage the trust, ensuring that the funds were used responsibly and in accordance with Uncle Silas's wishes. My family reluctantly agreed, seeing it as a way to control the situation, to keep me from accessing the money directly. I played along, nodding meekly, letting them believe they had outmaneuvered me. Inside, a cold fury simmered, a burning desire for retribution. That night, I couldn't sleep. The faces of my family, contorted with greed and resentment, swam before my eyes. The sting of Aunt Clara's betrayal was particularly acute, a sharp, throbbing pain that wouldn't subside. I tossed and turned, replaying the scene in the law office, searching for some sign, some indication that I had misjudged her. But there was nothing. Her eyes had been cold, her voice laced with the same venom as the others. I was alone. Again.
The next few months were a blur of court hearings, legal paperwork, and endless meetings with the appointed trustee, a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Albright. My family fought every step of the way, throwing up roadblocks, questioning my competence, and attempting to undermine the terms of the trust. They hired expensive lawyers, dredged up ancient grievances, and spread malicious rumors about my past. They wanted to paint me as a gold digger, a con artist, someone who was only after Uncle Silas's money, and it was working. Mrs. Albright, initially neutral, began to regard me with suspicion, her questions becoming more pointed, her demeanor increasingly cold. I felt like I was being suffocated, trapped in a web of their making, slowly being strangled by their lies. I tried to reason with them, to appeal to their sense of decency, to remind them that we were family. But my words fell on deaf ears. They were blinded by their greed, consumed by their desire to protect what they saw as rightfully theirs. My mother, always a peripheral figure in my life, remained aloof, observing the drama from a distance, offering neither support nor condemnation. Her silence was a constant ache, a reminder of the chasm that separated us. I lost my job. A whispering campaign, orchestrated by my cousins, had poisoned the well, turning my colleagues against me. Accusations of theft, incompetence, and unprofessional behavior followed me like a shadow, making it impossible to find another position. My savings dwindled, my rent was overdue, and I was forced to rely on the meager assistance provided by the state. I was back where I started, living on the fringes, struggling to survive. The weight of their injustice pressed down on me, crushing my spirit, stealing my hope. Sleepless nights were filled with anxiety and despair, visions of a future consumed by poverty and loneliness. I started having nightmares, vivid dreams in which my family hunted me through a dark forest, their faces twisted with malice, their hands reaching out to ensnare me. I felt like I was losing my mind. But even in my darkest moments, I refused to give up. I clung to the memory of Uncle Silas, a man I barely knew, but who had seen something in me, some spark of potential worth nurturing. His gift, though tainted by the circumstances surrounding it, was a lifeline, a promise of a better future. I owed it to him and to myself to fight back, to prove them wrong. I started documenting everything, every lie, every accusation, every act of sabotage. I meticulously recorded their phone calls, their emails, their social media posts, building a case against them, gathering evidence of their conspiracy. I knew it was a long shot, but it was all I had. My survival was dependent on the truth. Their biggest mistake? Underestimating my resolve. They thought they could break me, grind me down until I was nothing but dust. But they had underestimated the power of a wounded spirit, the fierce determination of someone who had nothing left to lose. They had lit a fire in my belly, a burning desire for justice that would not be extinguished. I may have been down, but I was not out. The game had just begun. The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday. A crisp white rectangle of doom slipped under my apartment door. 3 days, that's all I had. 3 days to find a new place to live. 3 days to pack up my life. 3 days to face the crushing reality that I was about to be homeless. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, the colors draining away, leaving me in a monochrome nightmare. I sank to the floor, the eviction notice clutched in my trembling hands, and wept. Not just tears of sadness or frustration, but tears of pure, unadulterated despair. Tears for the life I had lost, for the dreams that had been shattered, for the family that had abandoned me. It felt like I was drowning, the weight of their cruelty pulling me down into an abyss of hopelessness. The walls of my tiny apartment seemed to close in on me, suffocating me with their silent judgment. Every object, every photograph, every piece of furniture was a reminder of what I had lost, of what had been taken from me. The silence was deafening, broken only by my ragged sobs. I felt utterly alone, abandoned by everyone and everything I had ever cared about. The shame was a burning brand on my skin, the humiliation a constant gnawing ache in my gut. I was a failure, a reject, a pariah. They had won. They had finally broken me. That night, I walked. I walked for hours, aimlessly wandering through the city streets, the cold wind biting at my skin, the neon lights blurring into a hazy kaleidoscope. I passed by the fancy restaurants my cousins frequented, the boutiques where my aunt bought her designer clothes, the theaters where my mother went to escape her own reality. Every glimpse of their world was a painful reminder of the life I had been denied, the life that had been stolen from me. I considered ending it all. The thought was a dark, seductive whisper in the back of my mind, a promise of oblivion, a release from the pain. I could just walk into the river, let the cold water engulf me, silence the voices in my head. It would be so easy. But something stopped me. A flicker of defiance, a spark of anger, a refusal to let them win, even in death. They wanted me gone. They wanted me silenced. They wanted me to disappear. And I refused to give them the satisfaction.
I found myself on a park bench, overlooking the city skyline. The lights twinkled like distant stars, mocking my insignificance. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering in the cold, and stared out at the vast expanse of the night. I thought about Uncle Silas. I barely remembered him. A kind face, a gentle smile. But he had seen something in me, a glimmer of hope, a potential for something more. He had left me a gift, not just money, but a chance at a future, and I was going to honor that gift. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and made a decision. I would not let them destroy me. I would not let them steal my life. I would fight back. I would make them pay. A cold, hard resolve settled over me, replacing the despair with a burning determination. I was no longer the victim. I was the planner, the huntress, the instrument of their downfall. They had awakened a monster, and now they were going to pay the price. The tears stopped. My vision cleared. The shaking subsided. I was calm, coldly, terrifyingly calm. I spent the next few days living on the streets, scrounging for food, sleeping in doorways, and avoiding the gaze of pitying strangers. It was brutal, degrading, and terrifying. But it also hardened me, stripped away the last vestiges of my innocence, and fueled my burning desire for revenge. I used every spare moment to gather information, to piece together the puzzle of their lives, to uncover their secrets, and to identify their weaknesses. I haunted their social media accounts, eavesdropped on their phone calls, and even followed them to their homes and offices. I became a ghost, a shadow, an unseen observer, meticulously documenting their every move. And what I discovered was shocking. Lies, deceit, betrayal, infidelity, embezzlement, and blackmail. Their perfect lives were nothing but a carefully constructed facade, a house of cards built on a foundation of corruption and deceit. And I was going to bring it all crashing down. The exact date they tried to end me was the day revenge was born. I smiled. I played their game, but I was recording everything. Every condescending remark, every veiled threat, every smug glance exchanged across the courtroom. I let them think they were in control, that they had successfully marginalized me, silenced me. All the while, I was meticulously gathering evidence, building a digital fortress of truth that would eventually bury them. My initial forays were simple: screenshots of social media posts, recordings of phone calls, thank you readily available spy apps, saved email exchanges. But as I delved deeper into their tangled web of lies,
I realized I needed more. I needed irrefutable proof, something that would stand up in court, something that would expose their crimes beyond any doubt. That's when I started learning about digital forensics. I devoured online courses, watched countless YouTube tutorials, and immersed myself in the world of data recovery, encryption, and cybersecurity.
It was a steep learning curve, but I was driven by a singular purpose: to dismantle their empire of deceit, brick by brick. One of my first targets was my cousin, Richard. He was a rising star in the finance world, known for his sharp mind and ruthless ambition. But I knew his success was built on a foundation of insider trading and shady deals. I started by targeting his email account. After weeks of painstaking research, I discovered a vulnerability in his company's security system, a backdoor left open by a careless IT employee. It was like finding a golden key to his kingdom. Using a combination of social engineering and brute force attacks, I was able to bypass his password protection and gain access to his inbox. What I found was a treasure trove of incriminating evidence: emails detailing illegal stock trades, confidential financial documents, and correspondence with known criminals. I meticulously downloaded everything, creating a digital archive of his misdeeds. But I didn't stop there. I wanted to expose him publicly, to destroy his reputation and ruin his career. So I leaked the information to a reputable investigative journalist, someone who had a track record of exposing corporate wrongdoing. Within days, the story broke, sending shockwaves through the financial world and turning Richard's life upside down. He was suspended from his job, facing criminal charges, and ostracized by his peers. It was a sweet victory, but it was just the beginning. Next on my list was Aunt Clara, the woman whose betrayal had cut me the deepest. She presented a different challenge than Richard. Her sins were more subtle, more insidious. She wasn't involved in any overt criminal activity, but she was a master manipulator, a puppet master who controlled everyone around her with her charm and her lies. Her weapon of choice was gossip, spreading malicious rumors and playing people against each other. I knew I had to expose her for what she was: a toxic influence, a snake in the grass. I decided to target her social circle, the group of wealthy and influential women she used to maintain her power. I created a fake social media profile, posing as a new arrival in town, eager to make friends and climb the social ladder. I infiltrated their exclusive events, befriended their children, and slowly gained their trust. All the while, I was listening, observing, and gathering information about Clara's past, her secrets, and her vulnerabilities. I discovered that she had a long history of infidelity, that she had cheated on her husband multiple times with various prominent men in the community. I also learned that she had a gambling problem, that she had racked up significant debts at the local casino. Armed with this information, I began to subtly sow seeds of doubt and suspicion among her friends. I leaked anonymous tips to their spouses, hinting at Clara's affairs. I shared carefully crafted rumors about her gambling debts, suggesting that she was desperate for money. Slowly but surely, her carefully constructed world began to crumble. Her friends turned against her, her husband filed for divorce, and she was shunned by the community. She lost everything. Her reputation was ruined. The irony, she had no idea it was me. My mother was the most difficult target of all, not because she was particularly evil or corrupt, but because I still harbored a flicker of hope that she might redeem herself, that she might finally acknowledge me as her daughter. But I knew I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. I had to treat her the same way I treated everyone else. I started by investigating her past, trying to understand why she had abandoned me, why she had been so distant and cold. I discovered that she had been struggling with depression for years, that she had been overwhelmed by the responsibilities of motherhood, and that she had felt trapped in a loveless marriage. I also learned that she had been secretly sending money to a charitable organization that supported underprivileged children, a fact she had never shared with anyone. It was a small act of kindness, but it gave me a glimmer of hope that there was still some good in her. I decided to confront her. I arranged a meeting at a neutral location, a quiet park on the outskirts of the city. I laid out all the evidence I had gathered, detailing her family's lies, their betrayals, and their attempts to destroy me. I told her how much she had hurt me, how much I had longed for her love and support. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply spoke the truth,
calmly and rationally.
My mother took the stand, testifying against her own family, confirming their guilt, and apologizing for her role in their conspiracy. The defense tried to discredit me, to paint me as a vengeful and unstable person, but their efforts were futile. The evidence was overwhelming, the truth undeniable. The jury deliberated for hours, but their verdict was inevitable. Guilty. Guilty on all counts. As the judge read the sentence, a wave of relief washed over me. I had done it. I had exposed them for what they were. I had avenged my suffering. They lost everything. Their money, their reputation, their freedom. They were stripped of their power, their privilege, and their status. They were ostracized by society, shunned by their friends, and abandoned by their loved ones. They were left with nothing but the consequences of their actions. I just smiled. The revelation about Uncle Silas's will was the final piece of the puzzle. I had suspected for years that my family had manipulated him, but I never had any proof, until now. Hidden deep within my mother's financial records, I found it. A series of transfers, disguised as loans, funneled into her account just days after Silas's passing. The amounts matched exactly the inheritance I was supposed to receive. They had stolen it. Not just the money, but my future, my chance at a normal life. This wasn't just greed. It was calculated cruelty. It was the ultimate betrayal. And it gave me the leverage I needed to bring them all down. Their biggest weakness? Their arrogance. They thought they were untouchable, that their wealth and power shielded them from any consequences. They underestimated me. They assumed I was broken, defeated, incapable of fighting back. They were wrong. So utterly, devastatingly wrong. The plan was intricate, a delicate dance of deception and manipulation. I started by contacting my cousin Emily. She had always been the black sheep of the family, resentful of her sibling's success and desperate for attention. I knew she harbored secrets, and I suspected she had information that could be damaging to the others. I approached her cautiously, feigning vulnerability and seeking her advice. I told her I was struggling, that I was considering taking legal action against the family, but that I was afraid of the consequences. I played on her insecurities, flattering her intelligence and hinting that she was the only one I could trust. It worked. She eagerly offered her help, spilling secrets about Richard's financial wrongdoings and Clara's scandalous affairs. She even provided me with documents and recordings that corroborated my suspicions. But I didn't reveal my true intentions. I led her to believe that I was only seeking financial compensation, that I was willing to settle out of court if they offered me a fair amount of money. I wanted them to think they could buy me off, that they could make me disappear with a check. It was a trap. A carefully constructed illusion designed to lure them into a false sense of security. Next, I focused on my aunt. I knew that Clara was obsessed with maintaining her social standing, that her reputation was everything to her. So I decided to target her where it would hurt the most, her beloved charity gala. Every year, she hosted a lavish event to raise money for underprivileged children, basking in the admiration of her wealthy friends and associates. It was her moment to shine, her opportunity to showcase her generosity and compassion. I planned to turn it into her public execution. Using the information I had gathered from Emily, I created a series of anonymous pamphlets detailing Clara's infidelity, her gambling debts, and her manipulative behavior. I printed hundreds of copies and arranged for them to be distributed to every guest arriving at the gala. I also leaked the information to a local gossip columnist, ensuring that the story would be plastered all over the newspapers the next day. I wanted to humiliate her, to expose her hypocrisy, to destroy her reputation in front of everyone she knew. I wanted to watch her world crumble around her. Richard was a different beast altogether. He was ruthless, calculating, and paranoid. I knew that he wouldn't fall for a simple trick. I needed to use something bigger,
something that would strike at the core of his ambition. I knew that he had been secretly plotting to overthrow his boss and take over the company. He had been gathering evidence of his boss's wrongdoings, hoping to use it as leverage to force him out. I decided to beat him at his own game. I hacked into his computer and stole all the evidence he had collected. Then I anonymously sent it to the authorities, along with a detailed account of Richard's own criminal activities. I framed him for everything, making it look like he was the mastermind behind the whole operation. I knew that he would be arrested, that his career would be ruined, and that he would spend years in prison. It was the perfect revenge. The final step was the most dangerous of all, confronting my mother. I knew that she was the key to everything. If I could convince her to testify against her family, I could guarantee their conviction. But I also knew that she was conflicted, torn between her loyalty to her family and her desire to do the right thing. I decided to appeal to her conscience, to remind her of the pain and suffering they had caused me, and to show her that they were capable of anything. I presented her with all the evidence I had gathered, the documents, the recordings, the testimonies. I showed her how they had manipulated Silas, how they had stolen my inheritance, and how they had tried to ruin my life. I told her that I didn't want revenge, that I only wanted justice. I told her that I wanted her to be a mother, not an accomplice. The choice was hers. She could continue to protect her family, or she could finally stand up for what was right.
She could remain silent, or she could speak the truth. The fate of my family and my own rested in her hands. The exact day they tried to end me, they walked right into my trap. The day of the gala arrived like a crescendo of thunder. As the guests, dripping in jewels and arrogance, arrived, the pamphlets rained down upon them. I watched from across the street, the crimson glow of the city lights painting the scene. Aunt Clara emerged, her face a mask of practiced serenity, but as the whispers started, as people began to unfold the damning leaflets, her facade cracked. Her eyes darted around, searching for the source, for the enemy. The color drained from her face as she realized the whispers were turning to stares. The gossip columnist, camera flashing, moved in for the kill. Her carefully constructed image, her social power, evaporated in the cold night air. I could almost taste the ashes of her dreams. Richard's downfall was swift and brutal. The authorities, armed with the evidence I provided, raided his office before dawn. He was dragged out in handcuffs, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. The news spread like wildfire, his name forever tarnished, his ambitions reduced to dust. His colleagues, once so eager to bask in his success, now shunned him like a leper. The empire he had so ruthlessly built crumbled around him, leaving him buried in the wreckage of his own making. His biggest weakness? Blind ambition. He thought he could outsmart everyone, but I was always 10 steps ahead. He underestimated the power of a wounded soul with nothing left to lose. My mother's testimony was the turning point. Her voice trembled as she recounted the family's lies, their manipulations, their greed. She spoke of Silas's will, of the stolen inheritance, of the years of pain they had inflicted on me. Her words were a dagger to their hearts, piercing through their carefully constructed defenses. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of shame and remorse. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I should have protected you." It was a moment of catharsis, a release of years of pent-up guilt and regret. In that moment, she became my mother, not just a blood relation. Their faces, once filled with defiance, now reflected a chilling realization. They were truly going to pay for their crimes. The jury's verdict echoed through the courtroom, guilty. The judge handed down the sentences, each one a hammer blow to their shattered lives. Richard was sentenced to years in prison, his financial empire reduced to nothing. Clara lost everything, her social standing, her wealth, her friends, her family. She was left alone, ostracized and humiliated. My mother, despite her cooperation, received a lighter sentence, a testament to her remorse and her willingness to make amends. The courtroom emptied, leaving me alone with the ghosts of my past. I had done it. I had brought them to justice. I had avenged the years of pain and suffering they had inflicted on me. But there was no joy in victory, no sense of triumph, only a hollow emptiness. The revenge I had sought for so long had finally been achieved, but it brought no lasting satisfaction. The scars of the past remained, etched deep within my soul. The years of betrayal and abandonment could not be erased, no matter how severe their punishment. They lost everything. I just smiled. It wasn't a smile of happiness, but a smile of closure, a smile that said, "It's over." The weight of the past lifted from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of weary resignation. I walked out of the courtroom into the bright sunlight, a free woman, free from the burden of revenge, free from the chains of the past. I had faced my demons and emerged scarred but not broken. I had learned a valuable lesson, that revenge, while sometimes necessary, is never truly satisfying. It's a dark path that can consume you if you're not careful. The true victory lies not in vengeance, but in healing and moving forward, in building a new life free from the shadows of the past. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. It's the bitter medicine you take when the world has poisoned you, a desperate attempt to restore balance when everything has been taken. But it's not a cure. It's a surgery. You survive, but you're forever marked. It changes you, and you have to live with that. The question isn't whether they deserved it. They did. The question is whether I deserve to carry that darkness within me for so long. Now I can finally let it go. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.